kind of thinking about that, Angel, maybe you could start us with our second question. What, in your opinion, have been some of the biggest obstacles that you've had to overcome?
The parents, and I say that in a nice way, because they don't know the system we have in the classroom. So that first week, I joked that I was going to quit during my office hours because I was getting the same email from different parents through multiple platforms. So I think the hardest thing was getting the parents, and I think they were overly stressed. So it was a lot of making sure, because they're like, is my child going to fail? And it's no. It's second grade. I know I can say that. Like, it was like, if they were fine before, they're going to be fine now. So assuring the parents that if you don't get it done, we'll figure it out, and being patient, because it's like, it's a pandemic. Yes, academics are fine, but as people, we care about you. So finding the balance between education and humanity was a big one.
I want to jump in next about the biggest obstacles that you guys have had to overcome.
I'll talk a little bit. One of the things that is kind of, well, everybody's got problems and they're all different. For computer science, I'm teaching programming classes, and students are used to using the computers in our computer lab, which are PCs. At home, students have PCs, they have Macs, they have Chromebooks. My initial concern was, how am I going to let kids program using the tools that they're used to? It's really kind of too late to switch to something completely brand new. I'm especially fortunate in that my IT guy is just awesome, and he managed to create virtual machines that students could connect to from home. And it's virtually like they were on the computer at school. But there was definitely a learning curve getting them hooked up to it and getting them to think about this sort of new modality for using the technology. I have no idea how schools are teaching computer science and programming, without that kind of IT support. So I imagine that's a huge problem in a lot of places.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think probably one of the biggest, well, two big obstacles that we had is, first was establishing clear lines of communications with everyone. Like I'm hearing what Angel was sharing about, like all these messages on different platforms. And we are pretty lucky in the sense that we have like a dedicated platform that we normally use for communicating with parents already. But it was just like reassuring that if the message isn't on here, then it's not legitimate. Like, there was a lot of information from a lot of different sources that people were drawing on. They're saying, well, we're hearing that provincial exams have been canceled. Is that true? We heard that this is happening. And it's like, look, if it's not here, don't worry about it. And I think the second challenge that we had was I think every teacher in their mind somewhere, big or small, had this little brain spark plug go, okay, I have to do this. Now, whatever this is for you, I think will vary. For some people, it was a very small thing, like, I need to make sure that I get this for my classroom. But for other people, it was a much larger spark, and it was them thinking about assessment or preparing kids for tests, or like these really big picture items, and their desire to do more than what the situation warranted or what they were actually able to do. And I found a lot of people in conversations were potentially setting themselves up for a really, really rude awakening or a really big failure, because it's like, you need to put the brakes on. As it's been mentioned in this conversation, this is a global pandemic. This is a 1 in 100-year event, hopefully. We need to treat that with the seriousness that it deserves. You can probably count on one hand the amount of professional organizations that have been required by governments around the world to continue operating. And education is one of them that's very rarely talked about. Like, yes, we've got all the health services, we've got police, we've got firefighters, we've got military, but we also have the teachers that are being required to produce content for students. And that has a heap of challenges. We had department meetings where we took a really good look at the tasks that we were asking students to do. And we had to ask ourselves, is the task too small? Because if it was in a regular classroom, we would probably say, yeah, that task is probably a little bit too small or a little bit too simple. But then we remembered our context. We remembered how much work it will be for the student and the parents to work with that student at home to do that task. And then it was like, okay, we can take that step back and resist that urge to do more. Because as the situation changes, and if things get more complex, as they have in our context here, it's a lot easier to gear up and maintain parent expectations, especially. But if you start to gear down, that's going to create more problems, because then you're going to have stakeholders saying, well, why aren't you doing this anymore, right? So managing those expectations, I guess, is also part of it.
I agree. And when thinking about it, I think about the differentiation we do typically for our individual education plans or 504 plans. But now there's a whole new differentiation of what is the plan of that individual student in the context of their home situation, what might be happening with family, their relatives. We're relatively close to New York. A lot of our parents work there. So unfortunately, some of our students' family members have been experiencing COVID hospitalizations and so forth. So you want to make a task that's meaningful, that's relevant, but you also realize that it might not matter at all to them. That's the least of their concerns. So I totally changed how I'm teaching, what I'm teaching, and making sure, does this have any long-term benefit? Is it going to be meaningful in their lives later? So I've done things like time capsules and interview family members, things that are going to have some long-lasting impact, not do you know how to find geographical coordinates of a location so much as what's meaningful to me, finding out about my family, recording my time in this moment in history. So I think that was another one of those obstacles, is really kind of changing the way I thought. We had 30 minutes to go back into our classrooms and get anything we wanted to bring home to teach with. And I spent some of that time just taking pictures around my room and then making myself part of my classroom and doing green screen teaching, so the kids could at least feel that sense of normalcy, that, okay, Mrs. Tyra's in the classroom, I know she's not, but I feel better because I see my mood meter on the wall, and I see the birthday banner, and I see that picture of Bruce Springsteen that she has up in the corner of her blackboard as inspiration to her. So it's just those little things that were obstacles that you just spin it around and you say, no, we're going to make this into something that's benefits.
Letitia, did you want to share one of your biggest obstacles?
I mean, I think it's remembering the many things that our kids are going through behind the scenes. I'm really trying to form connection and community with my students, despite us being apart. So I've implemented something called the daily question of the day, and it's really just it's something I post in my Google Classroom. It's the same Google form. It's a way that I can take attendance just to prove my 8th grade computer class is a high school level course. So one of my biggest fears is that someone will come back to me and say, how can you make sure your students did the work? They won't get high school graduation credit because we've had this quarter plus of online school, and that's terrifying to me because they've worked so hard. And so not only is it an accountability measure, and I tell them, look, I want to make sure that you're getting high school credit for this because you need this for a Maryland state graduation requirement, but I also just want to know how you're doing. So I'll ask them fun questions, and then I'll ask them like some more serious questions that really just tie into understanding how they're feeling as they go through this transition. You know, I asked them the other day how they're feeling. Give me one word to describe how online school is going. And I got some really deep answers from some of my kids. One kid, you know, you get the range of responses from 8th graders, but it is really insightful to see that. And that gives me a little window into how they're doing that I'm not necessarily getting in the time that I'm doing live lessons on video and things like that, because a student might not, just like when they're in the classroom, they might not want to tell you what they're going through in that moment, but that that question of the day can be a really safe space. They know that I'm the only one seeing it, and they know that I'll follow up with them via email. So usually if I see something that's concerning, I'll send them a little email and just check in with them. Most times I won't hear back, but they know that I'm here. And I think building, continuing to build that communication, continuing to let them know that we're here for them and they can trust us, and just we're a huge source of support, is really important in this virtual learning environment.